Hi everyone.
This will give us a talk about how to start and launch your startup without a CTO. So,
thank you very much. Thank you for allowing me to speak to the local startup ecosystem. Basically, I'm Amaury. My name is Amaury. I already talked to a few of you. I live in south of France, and my day-to-day job is to help startup grow. I have a technical background since I was 16. I am 35 now. Since I was 16, I did code, I did manage technical team. I helped a big, large company of 500 people to industrialize their project. And since I left this corporate world, and I think forever, in 2012 actually, I built my own startup, which was a fail. And a few years later, I helped other startups with my strongest skill set, which was being a technical manager and having the understanding of how things works. Building a startup is all about opportunities. 10 days ago, I didn't know anyone in Malta, and today I'm just talking to you here, just by sending an email and saying, hello, I'm coming for a week of holidays in Malta, and if you want, like I help local startup in French, I can help maybe by giving you a couple of tips. I can help some Maltese startups as well. So we are not too much. We can try to make it interactive. If you have at some point a very important question, feel free to raise your hand and I will do my best to answer it in the fastest way as possible. The goal for this evening is just to provide you the asset, the skill set that is required for a CEO to manage a technical startup from the ground to up to 25, 30 people. Basically, that's the type of clients I work with. I also work with incubators and accelerators in Trent. And there are a couple of challenges that can be avoided. The classical scenario, and I had a couple of notes regarding that. The classical scenario is the founder who has a great idea but do not have the technical skill set to move forward. And in that case, he starts this quest to find like the grail, the CTO, the technical profile that will help him to build his product, his first version, his MVP. But you know, you cannot get married with someone you just met. And we will talk again about that point, but it's very difficult to find someone who will say, okay, I will dedicate all my day and night to your idea and help you build that great startup. That doesn't work. What works is starting to work together, maybe for free for a few days, maybe a week or two, and then moving slightly from a freelancing model to an equity model, and then moving forward to establishing a cap table that will increase along the way, counting the time, counting the investment, counting the value like partnership, the network, the opportunity that you can provide at some point to your startup project. So that's the first use case, the founders which is alone without technical skill set. The second one is a startup who has been in the place for a while, and the key developer is leaving. The key developer is leaving, whether with a conflict or not. And in that case, actually, that's most of the clients I have come back to me saying, "Oh, can you just help me? I don't know how to move forward. Someone code that stuff. He left with the source code. I just have my product on Apple Store and Android. I don't know how to first hire someone else, which type of person I need, and how the code has been developed, where." Okay, that's a lot of things, a lot of questions that I hope you will not ask to yourself later. And how you can avoid that is just by keeping control and asking to your developer to work hand in hand, and everything that everyone do for the company belongs to the company. That's if there is a key point, that this one, you as a founder, when you start working with a technical profile, the first things you should do is to open an account on GitHub, Bitbucket, or GitLab. Okay, maybe you don't know this kind of website, but all developers do. This is the place where we share source code. And even if you don't have any technical profile, I highly recommend you to open your account, and as soon as you work with someone, you will have the control of everything. You will have a copy of the source code. You will be able to allow any developer, new developer, to audit your code, to do development. Maybe you will be able to remove some developers' work, and you will have that control that any founder who lose his key developer should have been prepared. So, key things: Bitbucket, GitHub, or GitLab. That are the 3 websites. Just pick one of them. There are a couple of advantages. You will maybe check that on the web. So the conflicts happen when things don't go right. If everything went right, usually that's easier. But when the business is not as good as has been planned, but sometimes the developer needs to just find another job, or maybe a lack of cash flow required to work part-time on the project, and that's usually a bad sign, and that's where the conflict happened. I had a client 2 days ago where the developer worked for free for 2 years, and finally the CEO, which has invested almost €500,000, said, okay, you want to left? He just kicked him out, and finally I was fighting on the server with the developer remotely, finding and cutting firewalls to keep control of things while he was trying to remove the source code of the application. And with the trial next to me, it was like NCES, same things but for real, and that's a shame, because finally, this company just shut down, and it was a fight for almost nothing. So that's the kind of type of situation I would love you to avoid, and if there is one thing I can do for it, and I hopefully that's why I'm here actually. On other use case, founders that have a business idea and that need to improve their roadmap. The roadmap is your heart. This is exactly what you should develop next. And depending if you have maybe 1,000, 5,000 or 50,000 euro to invest in your company, you will define a plan that will be totally different. And depending on that, investment just feel okay to do some temporary job. And by temporary job, I mean creating just a landing page, creating just an email sales funnel. Selling by email still work. That's work, because you are human, and just people want to do business with human, and not always with a SaaS company, a very large brand, well designed. You cannot afford that on the beginning, and I do not recommend you to invest a large amount of money until you are very sure that you have a good business model. Next use case, I'm going to try to make it fast. I gave my word to make it in 45 minutes. Founders need to understand what technology are relevant. Oh, basically, I forgot to ask, who has a technical profile? Raise your hand. Okay, maybe 25%. Okay. Marketing, I guess. Okay. Who is a founder? A startup founder? Okay, interesting. Thank you. That might help me. So, finding the right technology is key, and that's several points at several levels. Basically, if you have just an idea, like building an Airbnb app or whatever, you might at some point want to integrate maybe blockchain, maybe virtual reality, maybe augmented reality. There are lots of great startups that just skyrocket because at some point they bring the right technology in their product. So just be aware, try to read some tech news, even if sometimes that can be boring, especially when we talk about code and languages. But having this understanding of the tech world might at some point give you some new idea and help you to provide a tech way, just to change your customer's life by bringing them a differentiate way of providing the service or the value. Just give value to your customers, and that's something enough to summarize that point. And that leads me to the last point, which is how to choose between a developer, a freelancer, or an outsourcing company. And if we move forward, we can also ask, should we offshore our development? Because at some point, hiring someone locally, I don't know, I don't know at all the price of a developer here in Malta. I guess it's maybe 200, 250 euros a day, something like that. Someone can confirm? No? I don't know. Is there any freelance? No? Okay.
There is freelance.
Yeah, but in software development?
Yes.
Okay, what is a common price?
It ranges 250 upwards.
250 up to 500? Oh, it's...
Keep on going.
Okay, keep going, okay. It's like, okay, pretty similar to French actually. So choosing the right person is not only a matter of skill sets, it's more a matter of mindset. Because you will see that the good mindset can learn anything, and the good mindset, if he is not relevant to do that job, will tell you the truth. While someone who is seeking for the money will just take the money and will struggle to provide you your product, and finally, maybe, eventually he will provide it or not. So basically all the clients, my business is to do kind of consulting with incubators, accelerators, also MBA schools. I help them in their startup ecosystem, and I'm moving slightly to doing online courses. And what I would like to be able to help, the way I would like to be able to help startup founders is to help them not wasting their time, money, and just going straight forward to providing the highest value to their customers by building the right product in the right way. And by choosing the right technologies and by having this control and being able to switch from one developer to another, from an expert to another. Because does anyone knows what is blockchain as example? Okay, can I have a quick definition of blockchain? Okay, I'm going to do it. So blockchain is basically a way to certify an information, certify that it has been created at some point, or it has been certified at some point, and that's a chain of a network of thousands of users that will certify that happened. And that's a chain because this certification is linked to the previous certification and also linked to the next certification. So you cannot break that chain, and which makes it very strong. That can help legal tech, that can help the banking, every fintech, finance tech, where you do payment whether with real money or virtual money. And that can help a lot of startups, like I have a startups who certify a picture. If you take a picture and you put it on the web, you can certify with the blockchain that this picture has been taken by your phone and no one on the web can use it without paying you royalties. That's a tiny example of what we can do with blockchain. So that lead me to say that the CTO role is to just protect the interest of the company by providing this technology insight and help to design the right product. While the outsourced company interest is to make money, and hopefully with your money. So if a company has an expertise, like let's say a company who develops software in PHP as example, their goal is just to prove you that PHP is the best choice for your product. While if you have another company, and I will take, sorry for that, but an example of an Indian company, because I got a lot of invitation from India company, which they are great at anything. They can do PHP, React, Node.js, they can do Ruby on Rails, they can do Python, and any type of project I can do, even AI, even they are great at it. You know, when you are great at everything, actually you are great at nothing. So if you need to choose someone, you should have the choice between several companies which are experts in their field. And if they just do PHP, that's fine. You know, PHP is not a so bad idea because that's the easiest language to find an engineer. While maybe another language like Ruby on Rails, which it's better in my point of view. But you will struggle to hire someone. Recently, a company in France raised 30 million. They are right now hiring 250 engineers in Ruby on Rails. That's a shame for the market because we don't have so much engineer in that language. And that's a lot of headaches for all these startups that add some engineer at some point. They generate some turnover because they had a better wages for that type of engineers. So that's a fight, and the competition is not always about the market, but that's always also about the people that you are going to hire at some point. So tech is a jungle, and choosing the right language is not easy, even for a technical profile. Sometimes the decision between one technology instead of another is just human. If we have the opportunity to work with a great engineer which fit to the project, who have a good market understanding of what we want to do, just go for it. We don't care actually if you build with a PHP language or whatever the language you are going to choose. Just choose people you want to work with. And that sounds basic, but unfortunately, it is not. That's usually the reason why projects fail, because that's when we choose a way to go because of technology. I'm talking about a starting project, you know, when you really have the choice. But if you already have a product, I recommend you to stick to that language, except if it needs to be redeveloped entirely. So, figuring out what technology can help you in your project, your clients is key. And today, maybe you want to start with that specific language, and at some point, you have in mind to integrate artificial intelligence. Is there any techie project, startup project who had in mind to use artificial intelligence about the founder? Does anyone plan to use it? Only one? Actually, I think you should all raise your hand. Because today, data is everything. If you build a company, whether in a B2C, B2B, or even more in a B2C market, you will have a lot of data. And with that data, you will be able to maybe think about another business model or to provide value to new customers by knowing and predicting what will be the behaviors of your application, actually of your customers, so that what will be the behaviors of your application. So, yes, tell me.
Considering the bulk of us have not embraced an AI project, for a number of reasons, you suggest what route is the person to integrate?
Yes. If we want to build an AI project, so the question was which type of profile we need when we want to build an AI project at some point. I recommend you to do not start with that in mind. I just recommend you to start building a business model, because creating the very first version of your business model with AI will be very complex, except if you are a data analyst. So first off, you build a business model around your market, providing some value. Then I recommend you to hire someone in data visualization. Data visualization will not be AI, but just having a perfect control of all the data that you have. You can work with tools like Tableau.com, a bit of talent, doing like, we call that ETL. I don't really remember exactly the name, but that's when you bring data from somewhere, you analyze it and you put it somewhere else. And by doing that work, this data visualization works, that might bring you some idea and then lead you to move to predicting things and hire a real AI engineer. Whether, yeah.
Are there shortcuts with hiring an AI engineer? In other words, are there APIs?
Absolutely. I wanted to talk about that later, but it's not required to build your own algorithm. You can use Google, like AI.api or API.ai. Sorry, API.ai. I think you have a brand like Microsoft. Microsoft do a pretty good job in terms of AI as well, especially on natural language processing. IBM. They do Watson, which provide very good, interesting things as well. Pretty expensive too. Not on the beginning. Everything is free on the beginning, but later it's more expensive. So anyway, just the goal of a startup is to find their business model and to be able to provide value. So we don't really care the way you're going to do it. Just do it by the opportunity you have. Find people that can help you by first data visualization, then figuring out some I would say links between data, and then moving forward to building something better. Everything is about API. API allow us to plug several information systems, and later down the road that will allow you to have a great behavior on your application. Yeah.
In the beginning you said that you had to rescue a project from a guy that was working 2 years on it, and you had to defend him from getting you. Why didn't you just involve him in the project, because he knew all about the project? And if I am a developer and work for a project for 2 years and not get paid and then get cut off of my work, I get pissed and then I sabotage the project.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened.
Somebody, and then you're suggested to go to GitHub, and when you go to GitHub, you have to accept certain rules and regulations and rights that GitHub provides, like GNU. You know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And your business idea depends on some intelligence and some special algorithm that you develop that you want to protect. If you make it open source, it is not protected. So
Absolutely.
you really have to decide whether you want to make your source code open to everybody to read, or to protect it for yourself as a USP.
Most of the projects keep their project private. I think more than 90% of the project, and I think that's a safe way to move forward. So when I was talking about GitHub, I was not talking about putting your source code open. I was just talking about hosting your source code. And regarding involving, regarding involving a developer in your project, that's obvious. But sometimes that's not enough. The developer that I was talking before, which has been kicked off of the project, had some equity in the company. But even at some point, he should have switched from 10% to 20%. So it was not too much. But regarding the $500,000 that the CEO just invested, actually that was fair.
Yeah, but when you have a developer that already developed your whatever you developed, then it's better to get this person, put him a hat on, and he has to develop some other team and continue with his baby.
Yeah,
it's usually the better way to produce a quality software.
Absolutely. Having someone, it depends on the maturity of the developer, if it is a senior or a junior developer. Usually it's easier to find a junior developer that is willing to invest time in your company, and when you have a senior, you will have to pay for him. So
For his work.
yeah. That's okay, but
If he's working, he should get paid.
yeah, absolutely, and usually that's what I recommend, especially if you don't know him. So having someone involved.
I thought it was a little bit misunderstanding.
Yeah.
Thought you're a developer and get somebody new.
No.
Don't worry about paying him.
No.
It's not a business.
What I really recommend is to pay people from the day one. Have an agreement on saying, okay, I paid you full time for 2 weeks. Then we're going to talk. If everything goes well, we maybe will reduce your rate for 50%, and the other part will go on equity. And just defining a cap table. At some point I defined the cap table. The cap table is where you will decide how many persons each person should have. And everything is built based on the value people brings to the company. Whether it's source code, investment, time. Count that on monthly basis, and every month you do a meeting and you readjust things. And you change the formula. If you need to have, you do need to have that formula that will adjust the investment, because maybe at some point the developer will say, okay, I worked full time, but now I cannot afford that and I need to take a part-time job. That's fine. So you were taking a large amount of the equity, but now maybe your equity will reduce because other people will keep moving and investing time. So having this cap table that is adjusted all the time regarding the investments that are just provided to the company along the way is, for me, the best way to move forward. I was talking about the roadmap. The roadmap is where you will define your very first step, like investing your maybe first K. First off, you need to prove your market, that's obvious. Then creating your first version. I recommend you to do not invest much more than maybe 20 to 30% of the amount of money you want to invest in your project, and moving forward with building an MVP. And building an MVP will go from creating a prototyping like Proto.io or Envision app application that helps you just doing the design, make a fake application, and let's get in the street and show people what your application will look like in a month or two. That's basically the way to get started without investing in development. Then as soon as you have enough feedback, and in-app vision as example, they can enable the webcam in the front of your application, and when you lend your mobile to someone, you record his face. And that speaks so much to see how when he clicks on that button, he's surprised. You will know that the button is not on the right place without having developed anything. So that's basically the type of practice I highly recommend you to do before developing the right product. So be aware of the technology you want to involve later down the road. We talked about AI, but it can be blockchain, it can be virtual reality, etc., etc. And just moving forward by defining each version. That's basically, I would say, 20% of my job is to help startups defining their roadmap. The way to do so is to let me just explain my methodology. I start by asking people 10 keywords of their value. So some of them say, honest, I'm transparent, I am humble, every type of words that can fit to their core value. Then I ask them to link these keywords to features, to all the features I have in mind. And after that, setting aside the features, targeting which keywords speaks the most to them. Why I have this path? Because you are building a company. And before to build a company, you are building a culture, the culture of your own company, the mindset you as a CEO, you want to communicate to all your employees. And if someone don't have the same mindset as you, that's not someone for you. If you have a doubt with hiring someone, that means there is no doubt. That means there is something that you can feel maybe with your guts that doesn't work. And at some point, you will have maybe not a conflict, but your road will be different. So defining this roadmap is the most complex things, especially when you evaluate the price of your entire product and you have a quote about for maybe 50 or 100k euro. In that case, if you have only 10, you do need to make some sacrifice. And the best way to do so is to focus on what are your value, what is the why. If you don't know Simon Sinek talk, I highly recommend you to go through it. Why you are building that startup. If you just focus on that, you will know which features and what is the feature that will help your customers. And even if that features represent just 10% of your entire plan, that would be enough as soon as people are ready to pay for that simple features. Next, we were talking about hiring someone, and today your needs. Let's assume a startup idea. I want to create this mobile application with AI, with blockchain, and later with virtual reality. The first point is just to have that prototype without tech expertise, just maybe a React native application, and have something to put in your customer's hands. This profile that will build this application has nothing in common with the later developer you will need to hire down the road. And that's fine. Just decide on each version what is the type of expertise you need. Be sure that this person is ready to work with others, and just figure it out by asking open question and not closed question, like, are you ready to work with someone else? Of course he will answer yes. But being sure that he shared the source code from the day one and not providing you the source code when you pay the entire invoice, that doesn't work. Because sometimes, and especially when we build startup, our specifications change. Why? Because we understand things along the way. So the best way is just to pay people for the time they will code your application. And if you want to outsource your developments, that's something pretty tricky to have, but that's something doable, definitely, is to define some rules from the beginning. You say, okay, you want to develop my application, I want you to do so, but you are going to use my website on GitHub, Bitbucket, or GitLab, and everything your developers do, I want to be able to see it on a daily basis. They might be scared for you to live with the source code without paying. And you say, okay, you want me to pay, I can pay you, and we can chunk the payments maybe on a weekly or on bi-weekly basis. And that's fine. You want to work in an agile methodology. On each retrospective, if we reach the goals, I pay you. And that's the final, and that's what makes this methodology great, is that at any time, if the provider doesn't fit, you are free to leave. He has been paid for the time he invests, and you have the product. The conflict arrived when finally you paid for something, but you don't have what was expected, and then the provider said, I will not leave you the source code until you pay the entire contract. Come on, if we are not on the same page, if you did some mistakes on the quotation and finally you thought you should have been able to develop my application with 15K while it worth 50, in that case, that's that's our mistakes to both of us. And doing agile methodology will help you, and doing regular payment will help you to move forward in a safe way with this exit door of saying, okay, we did a good job, or maybe not, but I paid you for the time, I have my source code, I can move forward. Yeah?
Okay, so two different kinds of contracts that you're doing. One is a working contract, where you work, where you pay on hourly basis or day basis, and the other one is for the result, for milestones where you get paid, and the result in the end. So totally different.
Absolutely, and I can go for a result one with the agile methodology. Basically, how it works is you're going to have your outsourced company who will analyze all your specification and say, okay, I can do it for 50K. And here is the milestone I define. We're going to reach this milestone, 10%. The value is 5K. If we don't reach that milestone, that means that we have a bad start. So we can talk and readjust. Maybe the founder was not precise enough. Maybe the specification was not good enough. Maybe the outsourced company was wrong and don't had a good understanding of the product. And in that case, you as a founder don't ask the company to provide the 50K value product for 15K. I should maybe choose another thing, but you get the point. If the outsourced company lose money, they will make you pay for it. Rather now, rather later, or rather they will not provide you what you were counting on. You know. So to move forward, depending on your roadmap, you should have an expert on each stage, and being able to switch from one to another, and being sure that they are ready to work with all together. So now I'm going to try to go through several things, several key points to help you move forward. Choose your developer for their mindset. That's gonna just wrap up everything we said. They should share source code daily, and what allow you to do as a founder is that allow you to know how many line has been committed by the developer, knowing if they worked or not on your project, or if there is another project on board, and maybe if your project hasn't been developed for a while. It's happened so often that the outsourced company say, we developed your application last week and the week before, but no developer actually really worked on it. So having this source code platform will allow you to really check and have this understanding and following the progress of the development. Be sure that when you choose a developer or an outsourced company, they are ready to learn things, new things, and they also know their own limits. If they are specialists in Java and at some point you ask them to develop Ruby on Rails or whatever, maybe they can do it, but they are not going to be the best at this type of work. So that might be a good thing if a developer says, okay, no, I'm just not the right person. If you want, I can help you to choose someone else, but I'm not the right person to do so. And that's exactly the mindset you should look for. A good developer will always prefer a framework, an existing framework. That means that all the developers from a community will work the same way. So if something happened, this guy left, or he has an accident or whatever, you will be able to find someone else more easily than if this developer developed his secret sauce that he's the only one to know how it works. Using cloud providers. When you have a technical profile, ask them, how can I use cloud providers' solution to accelerate my development? A junior might not understand the question. Someone who is a senior will know, okay, you want to do image recognition as example. Instead of asking people to fill in a very long form, I just want to allow people to take a picture of their ID card or whatever I want them to take a picture. And like Microsoft, Google, Amazon Web Services, and even IBM provide an image recognition features that cost maybe 10% of a cent, something like that. Something very well. Maybe we should pay $10 for 1,000 or $100. I don't know, but it's very cheap. You can recognize the picture and detect text, image, object, people, emotions. If someone is smiling, knowing if they have some glasses. So there is a lot of application by reusing someone else's product, and I mean cloud providers' product. And not only that, cloud providers also provide servers. A beginner will say, okay, I will manage your hosting things and manage your servers. Good startups don't have servers. Good startups have services. We can build an entire service, an entire product by using someone else's system. Amazon, Google, again, Microsoft, they provide quite the same, depending of what you are building. But you can just give them the code, and they host it for you. You give them the structure of the value, and they host it for you. No?
Yeah, you can give the code, and it's not yours anymore. And the payment plans of Amazon Cloud or whatever, they are so intransparent that you can really use your company if you're not having intelligent attorneys that do your contracts.
So what do you mean? You mean they can store your source code? Do you mean?
When you give the source code to Amazon to host,
yeah.
The source code lies with Amazon.
Yeah.
If you have your own server, you have control over everything.
Yeah.
It really depends on what you want to do.
Yeah.
Whether you can't just say for everybody that they should use cloud hosting. It's not correct. It can be the worst thing you can do as a business decision.
Actually,
you ruin your company if you take the wrong contracts.
It depends. Basically, Amazon, as example, I know Amazon pretty. I really know Amazon, and I have lots of companies.
Bad experience.
Good and bad experience. Okay. Basically,
But only bad. No good experience yet.
Okay. We have different experience, so.
For 30 years.
Okay, from my point of view, from my point of view, using cloud provider helps startups on the early stage. On the early stage, they don't care about your business. You are so small that you can move forward. Then, if you really have a secret sauce at some point, yeah, that might be relevant to have your own cloud provider or your own hosting provider and managing your own servers. But managing servers costs, and system administrators cost, database administrators, and so on and so forth. So that's so much skills and so much people, so much manpower that you need that you can just set aside when you are startups in the very beginning. So that's why I do believe that cloud providers can help a lot of companies. And today's most of the big startups use cloud services like Amazon or Microsoft. I do believe that there is some encryption and they do not store your source code. Maybe I'm wrong, but regarding all the experience, the risk when you build a startup is to do not find your market. So focus on your market, focus on your customers, not on the technical side, and the fear that someone will store your source code. I do not believe that is something that can happen. And I have no interest at all in cloud providers. I just know that it's a lot more easier when you use it. Okay, so just to wrap up, pay for lines of code, and not only for the time. Be sure that people pay and you have access to what they do. Call previous client if you want to work with someone that you don't know, and find someone that can provide you a new point of view of the work. And that's also the beauty of having access to source code. Maybe you don't have the qualification, the skills to understand how it works, but you can find someone else that will be just by putting his email on a GitHub, will have a quick look on it and will provide you a good point of view. Forget about the perfect solution. Yeah.
one more tip. In your contract, really say that they have to have at least 30% documentation on that.
Okay.
Documentation is key for other developers to understand your product.
Okay, that's something I might also have a different point of view, because a well-known source code, pretty well structured with the right pattern, following the right framework, is easy to understand. While if this is a handmade source code, that can be a nightmare, and half of the deliverables should be documentation, and I agree on that point. But if we follow the best practices, well-known framework, that depends actually. That depends. I'm not always. I'm not going to stick to that 30%. What is very important, otherwise, is this architecture of all the software and all the components that are linked all together, knowing which database is used, which API service is used. This point is very, very important, as it will help anyone to get to the project very easily, and on that point, that's very a requirement. Okay, so now last point is, when you found someone, what is the best way to work together? First off, I already covered that point, but don't get married right away, and work first on freelance model, then move slightly on involving people on board and giving them some equity with a formula that you will define together depending on the investment of everyone. Count investments. Clarify the situation, be transparent about your doubts, the value that you bring to the table, etc., etc. No tech background is required to keep track of the developers. Again, I highly recommend you to follow the Agile Scrum methodology, which comes with a weekly or bi-weekly retrospective, when you will review all the goals that the developer set to himself, and being sure that his methodology to evaluate his own goals is right. And if it's wrong, that also means that maybe he's working on a language he do not really control, and maybe he needs some help. And I think I'm almost to the end. Develop the minimum. Each stages, I talked about the roadmap. Develop the minimum on each stages. What your customers want, and that's it. Not that much. Just add a nice, beautiful design to have an easy-to-use application. If you have two things to focus, is the design and the key value, the key features for each stages. And last things, regarding the methodology that you might ask to your developer, is to use multiple environments and hopefully continuous integration. That's a pretty technical thing, but that helps founder to be able to test new version, to have new idea, to ask for development, to test new version, to be sure that everything is under control before to push on the right button and put it and publish the new version of your application. That's again key, especially when you grow and when you need to manage several developers. In that case, that will help you to know exactly to keep control of the quality of your development, and knowing which developer do some good job and which other don't.